Namaste and welcome to another seminar of the Center for Indic Studies as part of our monthly seminar series. We are very delighted to have Dr. Suyasha Singh Isser today as our seminar speaker, and she will be speaking on something which is kind of very of contemporary interest. I mean, we are in a time when we willingly give lot of information. We surrender our privacy. We kind of gift our privacy without even knowing it. And I mean, we think it is free and we, as I said, willingly submit all our information, but definitely it's not free. I mean, I heard a podcast where somebody said, well, if Zuckerberg and Google and all these companies are giving away all this for free, how come there are so many billionaires in, in their company? So it's definitely not free. So we are paying for it in some form or another. And I think the form sometimes can take very vicious, dangerous ends. And especially with regard to this surrendering of our privacy or disclosing of our privacy, with women, it becomes even more, it does have the potential to become even more dangerous, affecting physically, mentally. So, I mean, in the United States right now, we are in the midst of this deep fake. I mean, I guess it's global, not just United States. We have so many instances of now, even in high schools, students kind of explicitly, sexually explicit images they are sharing, they are creating, and it's a huge problem for the school administration. But then you can very easily extrapolate it to beyond high school. I mean, in workplace. So it's a big concern, and nobody really has an idea how to control it. I mean, there are plans afoot to control it from a legal perspective, but legal perspective is just one of the many, and its limits are, we all know, it has very kind of defined limits, so it cannot address the problem holistically. So the question is, can Indic perspectives help us in wrapping our arms around this problem? And so Dr. Suyasha Singh Isser, who's our seminar speaker today, she has thought about this for a long time, and she will present some ideas from the Indic perspective in terms of the concepts of dharma and ahimsa, karuna, how they can bring to the table rich discussion on these items. So Dr. Suyasha Singh Isser is a faculty at Amity University, Noida. She has a bachelor's degree in philosophy from Lady Shri Ram College, LSR, Master of Arts from University of Delhi, MPhil from University of Hyderabad, and PhD from University of Delhi. So we are very eager, Dr. Suyasha Singh, to hear from you. We will give you about 35-40 minutes of uninterrupted time. And after that, we will have a Q&A. So for all the others, if you could please mute your microphones so that we can hear Dr. Isser clearly. So with that, Suyasha, you can share the screen now.
Thank you for your kind words, sir.
Suyasha, if you can please go to the slideshow mode. Okay, very good. Very good. Thank you.
Sorry, sir.
Fine, fine. You please start.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, sir, for this kind introduction and your humble words. So, my topic today for The seminar is Data Justice and Caring Communities, exploring narratives in feminism and Indian philosophy. So this topic is something, this idea is something that uh, came in because of the daily experiences which we had with technology, with the new gadgets, and it led me to think that how, even though digital space, it helps connect local stories with global narratives, but the social, political, and economic witness movements here, it's been a long time since, it's been almost 200 years since we have witnessed waves in feminism in the Western context. So the first wave of feminism was in the late 19th and 20th century, which witnessed the securing the struggle for securing voting rights. And the second wave of feminism came in the 1960s, which called for securing of reproductive rights and sexuality and issues of empowerment of minorities. The third wave of feminism addressed issues on the ideas of womanhood, femininity, and gender. And but here, when we talk about Indian feminism, so the first wave focused on education and social reforms like sati, widow remarriage, and the or early marriage. The second wave of feminism dealt with issues in the private sphere like marriage, inheritance, succession, and dowry, violence, sexual assault. So it saw an intersections of the issue of caste, gender, and class. And the difference between the first and the second waves of Indian feminism is that while the former was led by men on behalf of women, it still promoted the patriarchal structure, whereas the latter, which was led by women and women-led organizations. So the third wave of feminism saw the government's focus on women's health and education and employment. So here, women's group redirected their efforts on economic and social reform and took up causes for Dalit and marginalized women. The fourth wave of feminism in India has emerged synchronously with the West due to the emerging use of technology and the availability of the internet around the globe. So it mainly focuses on the use of technology and the availability of internet to address the concerns including sexual assault, harassment, amongst many others. And there is also a language barrier which we witness because of the geographical location and the socioeconomic class. So the dominant language of conversation also plays a major role in who is seen and who is heard. It is felt that women in the global south face discrimination when their voices are considered different from the issues in mainstream Western feminism. And despite the initiatives by the government, women's empowerment seems to lack. So since the pandemic, women have been more susceptible to job losses and slow recovery of livelihood. Now, when we are talking about digital technology, we also come into terms with the idea of how we can say that that digital technology, where digital technology also acts as a right to privacy. So the United Nations Office of Secretary General Envoy on Technology has admitted that digital technologies act as an end to human rights, and they too emphasize extracting data from online platforms to find disinformation and look for ways to counter it along with enhancing transparency. Now, but when so under the guidelines of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the goal is to uphold the dignity of the people and maintain equality. But when it turns into a profit-making business, exploiting the lives, especially of women, it becomes more of a problem rather than a platform meant for convenience for the people. Now, To start with our understanding of what impacts this human world and how we can reshape the way we live and interact with the world, I would just like to give an introduction on artificial intelligence and the dynamics of gender and privacy here. So, artificial intelligence, as we all know, has significantly impacted the human world and the applications are widespread. So it is used in healthcare to give personalized treatment and assist in diagnostics. It has extended its possibilities in the areas of environment, education, and media art. And it has also brought significant challenges, benefits, and ethical questions since its advent. So one of the most critical aspects of its ethical use is bias in privacy and algorithms. So striking a balance between innovation and responsibility is the question here, and it is the goal here that is meant to be achieved. Now, ensuring technological progress aligns with the societal norms that creates a huge value. Now, people generally presume that in real life and practical world, people they generally assume that women are more responsible for their private conduct, and they are often looked at from the lens of being a woman, wife, mother, or sister, and they do not enjoy the same level of privacy in the private sphere because they become softer targets as they have been considered inferiors for a long time, and the accountability of accusations is sometimes justified based on this perception, and women are victimized. So these gender norms of misconduct also expand from real world to cyberspace, creating a huge risk for them, and they have been subjected to too much privacy with confinement at their homes, frowned upon in terms of expression of their sexuality, and they lack opportunities to engage in independent decision making. So everyone uses cyberspace to build careers, relationships, and businesses. And today we not only have social media platforms, but also virtual marketplaces along with personal gadgets of daily use, like Fitbit or biometric software or cameras. And women use it as a channel to look for personal development and self care. But this also makes them vulnerable to invasion of privacy because their data is exposed to the companies with whom they engage in business. And this sometimes includes their financial data. And now the challenges of artificial intelligence include biases in AI algorithms that create discriminatory outcomes when these data contain gender biases. And AI system also collect vast amounts of data with AI applications using predictive analysis, which can manhandle the personal data of women. Another one is facial recognition technology that can also lead to privacy violations, making women more susceptible to harassment and stalking. And women autonomy when they are compromise autonomy when they are disengaged from decision making processes, when their personal information is used by AI without obtaining consent. And the last one is the lack of diversity in the development and decision making processes of AI that generates a lack of motivation to develop solutions related to these mentioned challenges. So, in the age of information, data is often hailed as a new oil, fueling innovation, progress, and decision making across various domains. So, however, like any powerful resource, data is not neutral, and it also reflects and perpetuates societal biases which are rooted in gender. So data feminism emerges as a critical lens through which we analyze and challenge how data and its applications can perpetuate or challenge gender inequalities. So one of the key tenets of feminism is intersectionality, which acknowledges that individuals' experiences are shaped by multiple intersecting factors like gender, race, class, and by incorporating intersectional perspective into data analysis, researchers can better understand the diverse experiences and needs of different groups within the society. So data feminism seeks to challenge these gender biases. So for example, here in India, in traditional data collection methods, we may overlook or underrepresent the experiences of marginalized groups, leading to incomplete or inaccurate data sets. So by advocating for a more inclusive and safe data collection practices, data feminism aims to address these gaps so that all the voices are heard and accounted for. Here, ethical considerations are central to the practice. And the main challenge that emerges here is the lack of data literacy or the ability to understand and critically evaluate data, which has become increasingly important because a lot of people don't know how to use technology. So here, there is an advocacy for a more inclusive approach to data literacy education, one that empowers individuals from diverse backgrounds to engage with and challenge these data-driven narratives. Now here, uh, when we are talking about with the philosophical foundations of privacy, the main idea that comes here is the feminist care ethics. And it is an ethical framework that places interconnectedness and empathy under its veil. And it provides a unique perspective in the domain of technology and digital ethics to examine how decisions can be made. Now, here, ethical theories by Carol Gilligan or Nell Noddings put care as a fundamental moral principle. And that is a shift from abstract principles to shaping ethical responsibilities. Now, the first and foremost idea that comes under feminist care ethics is of autonomy, because digital intrusion of personal space basically lacks the fundamental character of what care ethics is about, and that is autonomy. Second one is the change in the power dynamics, because women have become more vulnerable here to discrimination and abuse. And here the care-based approach ensures the prevention of gender inequalities, but that is what is perpetuated here. And the last one is your emotional labor, because surveillance systems have an impact on the mental well-being of women, since it takes a psychological toll on them after being constantly observed. So, the ideas that define feminist care ethics include privacy, digital interaction, and intersectionality under the digital realm. So, the relational nature of privacy emphasizes that individual right is a relational concept, and the interconnectedness of individuals concentrates on how the impact of private decisions affect the entire community. It also, in some ways, highlight practices that affect the well-being and interrelationships of the people. So the design and development of digital space should be prioritized in such a way that it should take into consideration emotional and mental health of its users. It also examines the imbalances caused by the collection and personal use of data based on these ideas in when we are talking about Indian context, caste, and gender, and these other socially defined factors. Now, another point that comes in is about choice, because the question is now raised that if cyberspace is used by women, there are a lot of times when we come across reports or news articles which says that if a woman is facing certain challenges with the use of technology, they should either give it up. But now one of the factors that we will be discussing here is that it is not about giving up the use of something which you require in everyday life, and this is something that acts as your right, because usage of technology is also a right of a person. Now, and it is also, technology is also used by women to express their individuality freely and sometimes anonymously beyond these social, cultural, and economic factors. Because there are a lot of times where the use of technology is banned in certain households. So women take refuge in expressing themselves anonymously. Now, they do not always have to include their identity while engaging with technology, but when they do that, they face these challenges of harassment. Now, women, they consider it to be a place for free expression of their individuality. So they can interact with each other genderless and express themselves authentically. At the same time, some sites allow people to find their partners. So the matter of choice here comes into place when used in the cyber world. There are two cases which I would like to cite. One is of I Justine, a life caster in 2007 who used to broadcast her life in front of the world. And the same is the case with Jenny Cam by Jennifer Ringley, who did the same from the span of 96 to 2007, which required a $15 subscription to view her everyday life. Now, the current social media presence of the influencer does the same with stricter regulations on the content that has been generated. The companies here also hold the authority to remove any conduct that goes against their policies. So, online spaces perpetuate threat as image-based online crimes have reportedly increased. And non-consensual distribution of images also leads to these kind of abuse and where these images are circulated. Now, moving on, that is where where I would like to cite the Indian context where there is a connection that we explore between Buddhism and the essence of human rights, because we all share the same problems, needs, and aspirations. Then we must also share the ideas and solutions to solve the very issues and needs we have in common. So, human rights as a concept are inherently relational and amorphous, and they exist not as tangible entities, but they exist as abstract principles, which are articulated through pleas directed towards others. So the essence of human rights here, they uh, they lie in the ability that serve as a requirement for social behavior and governance. And this fundamental premise underscores the universality and this indispensability of human rights that transcends boundaries and nationalities and ethnicity, gender, and social status. So the measurement of rights finds resonance in various philosophical and religious traditions, including Buddhism. L.P.N. Pereira, in his commentary on Universal Declaration of Human Rights, explores this parallel between the principles articulated in the declaration and the teachings of Theravada Buddhism. He argues that the ethical precepts and moral guidelines outlined in Buddhist scriptures, they anticipate and align with the fundamental tenets of human rights. And this intersection also highlights the universality of human rights principles that are not only rooted in legal frameworks, but they also find their place in ethical and moral imperatives across cultures and civilization. So, by asserting rights as applicable to every human being, irrespective of social constructs, this declaration also underscores the intrinsic value and dignity of each individual. Here, the concept of golden rule also comes in, which is central to the human rights, the concept of human rights, that talks about how the rights of others should be protected with the same motivation as of one's own. Now, this principle also forms the moral bedrock of human rights advocacy and emphasizing this interconnectedness of individual freedom. The recognition of human dignity here is also inherent in all individuals that underscores this moral imperative to uphold and protect human rights. Now, the relativist critique here of human rights underscores this multifaceted nature, which not only includes cultural, social, but also historical context. Now, Buddhist teachings offers us insights into the relationship between rights and duties and virtues that presents an ethical framework that anticipates modern conception. Now, Damien Kron here suggests that Buddhist concepts of duties and virtues parallels the modern idea of rights, illustrating the complementary nature of rights and responsibilities in fostering a just and harmonious society. Here, the principle of universal responsibility, which is advocated by Dalai Lama, embodies this Buddhist ethos of compassion. Now, universal responsibility transcends these national boundaries, and this principle also talks about the moral imperative to elevate the suffering of others and promote the well-being of society as a whole. So, through practices such as bodhicitta, individuals cultivate empathy and altruism, and that fosters a sense of solidarity and mutual support within the human family. Now, non-violence and dependent origination, they also serve as foundational principle in Buddhist ethics, which underpins the imperative to alleviate suffering and promote harmony. In Buddhist vocabulary, pure mental states and actions are described as kushal, and they are translated to be as wholesome or skillful. And for impure states or actions, the word is akushal or unskillful. Now, the three are greed, hatred, and delusion. So, their wholesome opposites are non attachment, loving, kindness, and wisdom. Now, these qualities, as suggested, leads to awakening. And of the three unwholesome traits, it is delusion or ignorance that is generally considered to be the fundamental human problem. And delusion does not merely indicate an absence of knowledge, but the presence of mistaken views that function to obscure one's awareness of the ways events actually occur. And here, when we are talking about the organizations and the companies which try to exploit the content that is being generated online and the data that has been collected online, one first and the foremost problem is that they go through this delusion. And this Buddhist tradition recognizes that a person who has advanced on the path acts lovingly out of a basic compassionate orientation towards all beings seen in their suffering. And that is why genuine ahimsa is understood positively. It does not merely indicate the absence of harmful intent, but it actually talks about the actual presence of compassion. And compassion or karuna entails an active willingness to elevate the suffering of others, irrespective of personal gain or reward. And Buddha exemplified profound compassion and demonstrated empathy and concern for all the sentient beings. In the Theravada Buddhism, karuna is seen as a means to attain a happy present life and heavenly rebirth. And it is also regarded as a virtuous mental state that lead to personal happiness and spiritual fulfillment. Now, Mahayana Buddhism here also elevates compassion and talks about the status of enlightened wisdom on the Bodhisattva path, where enlightened beings who postpone their liberation to elevate the suffering of others embodies the spirit of karuna in their quest for enlightenment. Now, the Buddha's teaching here emphasizes the importance of compassion as the foundation of all virtues and gives rise to kindness, patience, happiness, and moral integrity. In order to elucidate further on this, another point that we are going to talk about is this moral landscape that is present, that needs to be present in the technological ethics. For this, I would quote Shannon Weller, who in her work, Technology and the Virtue, a philosophical guide to a future worth wanting, navigates this technology's potential benefits and the moral challenges that it faces. And the first and foremost challenge is the cultivating technological virtue. Aristotle in Nicomachean Ethics has talked about character traits, the virtue which is defined as a golden mean, that talks about how one lives, how one needs to live moderately by avoiding extreme pleasure or pain, by following the middle path. That is the golden mean. And it motivates one to cultivate virtues such as courage, wisdom, and justice. Now, valor here proposes cultivating these sustainable technological virtues for technological advancement of an ethically grounded future and to ensure a positive individual and societal well-being. The other point that she explores is of social dimensions, which talks about the ethical responsibilities towards the marginalized communities, future generations, and the environment. So, for an inclusive and equitable future in technology, she emphasizes on the virtue of justice, where she talks about how cultivating a sense of justice helps critically examine the distribution of benefits and burdens that accompany technology. The third one she talks about is of mindful engagement that we have already discussed. And the last one is privacy, where she emphasizes on safeguarding privacy as a fundamental rights because it protects an individual's autonomy. And recurrent surveillance and data collection hampers this virtue of the integrity of a person. Another point that she talks about is of ethical decision making, and which discusses about intersectionality and trust. Now, when we are talking about navigating intersectionality, I would just like to point out in the various dimensions that a woman faces in their lives across borders, across regions. First is the race and gender, because women of color face unique challenges with not only because of the historically systematic racism and gender discrimination, but that is also coupled with economic inequalities. And this gendered impact of surveillance leads to this perpetuation of harmful stereotypes for them. The second one is sexuality and gender, because uh, uh, um, lesbian, bisexual, and queer women, they find themselves at the crossroads when the societal norms and prejudices actually amplify their diverse experiences. And sometimes access to resources and overall well-being are influenced because of this discrimination that they face because of their sexual orientation. And here another point comes here of caste and gender, because uh, 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 the challenges that a Dalit women face is as compared to women belonging to other sections of the society. The formers are, they are more poor and they are socially marginalized. And because of the progress of a community, this can be measured only by the degree of progress that women have achieved. The another comes in the social factors and the social and economic status, because economic disparities also include limited education, health access to resources, and financial independence and employment opportunities, which also prolongs the cycle of poverty. And women belonging to lower income backgrounds also face the similar challenges of unable to secure economic stability. So lack of access to digital spaces causes these urban-rural divides to perpetuate, and they impact the education levels, and they also impact the digital participation of women. The last one is the legal and policy implications, because as Sir already mentioned in the introduction, technology in power and access to internet is essential for everyone. But in a country where women repeatedly they face these gender-based violence and discrimination, it is actually no longer surprise that denial of access to technology is another patriarchal tool that is helping in the subjugation of women. Now, uh, uh, there are certain feminist methods that have been discussed on these lines. And one of them is consciousness raising, which was given by Catherine McKinnon. And it also throws some light on these challenges that women face. And there are also suggestions that how can we overcome these issues. Now, she talks about consciousness raising, which helps in the accumulation of the shared experiences by women that will help them to mobilize and question the restrictions based on the above what I have discussed in the domain of intersections. And the collective reconstitution of the meaning of women's social experience, she talks about as women live through it. Consciousness raising inquires into the intrinsically social situation into that mixture of thought and materiality which comprises the gender in the broader sense. And it approaches its world through a process that shares its determination, women's consciousness, not as individual or subjective ideas, but as a collective social being. And it also draws on the awareness that women face restrictions at home and also workplace based on their sex. So all revolutionary movements start with a matter of creating respective perceptions for themselves. And the groups that are oppressed are emphasized to demolish these pertinent ideas surrounding them and project an identity of their own. And one of the first steps is to gather these women and connect them to articulate and confront. And the two broad areas that consist are private sphere and their sexuality. So McKinnon also emphasizes on how women are subjected to such denigrated treatment that they perceive themselves to be responsible for it. So this happens because women have learned that men look at them from their vision, from their gaze, and they have learned to look at themselves from the latest context of vision. So the consciousness raising tries to strike a redefined meaning of social relations and reconstitute this meaning. So, as I will quote her, she says, one form of male power is inside women. Male power both is and is not illusory, as it justifies itself, namely as natural, universal, unchangeable, given, and morally correct. It is illusory. But the fact that it is powerful is no illusion. Now, here she talks about the collective realities that are stigmatizing women's thoughts and livings. And in a stereotype setting, women select these events that they are encouraged to feel, and they choose, even though it feels to them that they do not belong there. This is also known as distortion of self, where women also sometimes succumbs to the pressure of these contextual narratives that are directed towards them. So for women to become their own person, they have to set new condition and choose their determination. And these factors that create hindrances of a person to realize their potential, it is initiated that they must overcome that. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning about the promotion of digital literacy, there are certain examples that I would highlight in the contextual understanding when we were talking about moral landscape and technological ethics, when we were discussing about autonomy. The main idea is that one of the steps is to promote digital literacy, because this will help women to control their digital lives, and they must have digital and data literacy skills in order to do that. So, United Nations Development Program has also opened economic opportunities for women, for underprivileged and marginalized women, including by investing in their skillful programs and increasing their digital literacy and familiarity with technological tools and platforms. So it is basically the promotion amongst women in order for them to increase in their use in technology. So there is this chart that I wanted to highlight how the internet usage differs by gender, both in the global and the Indian context. And as we can see that only 70% of 70% of the male population use the internet globally, and 63% of the female population use them. Here in the Indian context, 52% of male use the internet as compared to the 31% usage by women of the internet. Now, blogging and social media have actually been used as tools for building transnational networks and encouraging accessibility and community building. And this blog called When Women Refuse was started for women to share their experiences around sexual violence when several women were killed for rejecting advances made by men in California, US. And blogging has several times called for inciting these micro rebellions, which Catherine McKinnon is talking in context of consciousness raising against misogynist and these patriarchal actions against women. So there are about 45% of young cyber feminists between the age of 18 to 29 years. And the internet has provided women to use this platform separate from their material selves in order for them to create a fluid identity and a multi-subject personality to redesign their own spaces and to change their feminine condition. So here, when we are talking about feminism and women's group, they have not only attempted to spread awareness in online spaces, but they have also successfully challenged the status quo by causing a shift in the collective consciousness of the society. And here, that is why when I quoted Karuna, it is extremely essential for these companies, for these organizations to move beyond the profit making enterprises, which are discriminatory in nature, which are abusive in nature. And here, women's rights movement is should also be considered as a subgroup of these socio-political movements that are prevalent right now all over the world globally, and that can deal with these gendered experiences. So their nature could be also related to financial empowerment and this political visibility that they deserve. So many of these groups, they organize and advocate activism in these online spaces, which issues directly concerning these challenges of digital rights. Now, uh, uh, here, when addressing these challenges, they also require these stricter ethical guidelines, which, in terms of increased transparency and continuous improvement and inclusive representation in decision making and design processes. But there is also need to strike a balance between technological development and the protection of these fundamental rights. So the convergence of Buddhist teaching and human rights discourse underscores this universality and moral foundation of these human rights principles, from the recognition of human dignity to the promotion of universal responsibility. And this Buddhist ethics also offers a valuable insight into fostering a more just, compassionate, and harmonious world. So, by upholding these principles, individuals can strive to create a society that honors these inherent dignity and rights of all the beings. Now, it compassion embodies these principles of altruism and selflessness and empathy. By cultivating compassion, the practitioners, the policymakers can not only elevate the suffering of others, but they can also cultivate inner peace, wisdom. And here, Chanel Weller also talks about these choices and innovations of technology that are based on these ethical ground to create a future that is worth wanting. So, feminist care ethics not only helps us ground empathy, but also compassion. So, to achieve this democratic online feminism, the focus of the country should be on recognizing the gap and teaching these underrepresented groups of digital literacy, and so that they can communicate with these transnational agencies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suyasha, for so eloquently presenting this challenge to us. And I'm sure there are many people will have questions. So if you have a question, you can either type it in the chat box or raise your hand, and we will then spotlight you. So as people start to kind of develop their questions, let me begin. So as you said, this is a global challenge, and of course, there is a global response. How is this Indic perspective of this going to be different? I mean, in other words, are we just, I mean, you cited many scholars in this field, um, and you also brought in this Buddhist Mahayana concepts. How can we formulate an Indic response to this? If you could, I mean, you did touch upon it, but if you could elaborate a little bit.
Uh, so, sir, whenever we are talking about any kind of social challenge that we have to face. So recently here in India, we have this new education policy that came in, and it emphasized on Indian knowledge systems. And on Indian knowledge systems, so everyone was asking me that how this course is going to impact the education of children and undergraduate students and postgraduate students who are asked who in whose syllabus this is going to be an essential part. So the first and foremost thing here that I would like to highlight is the relevance of dharma. And here in at Amity, we have another program called Professional Ethics, where we teach students that no matter what profession you choose, you have to understand that you are creating an impact on the lives of the other person you are interacting with, and also you are impacting the lives of your community. And here, when in Indian knowledge system, we actually talk about here also. I would also like to highlight how the study of ethics is something that has been inculcated in engineering programs, in medical programs. Even we have this exam for civil servants, Union Public Service Commission, where they have a separate paper on ethics. Now, the main question that emerged in the minds of people was, why do we need ethics? And that was our answer, that it is extremely important for us to not only teach the technical aspects of an educational program, but we also need to teach them how to improve themselves, how to improve their own conduct, and how to follow your own duty, how to do justice with your own duty that you are assigned to do and which you have chosen to do. When we are talking about the usage of technology, including these Indic components is also very essential, because here I wanted to highlight that when you are using something, so technology is not only for us, as I mentioned in the talk also, that it helps us build relationship, it also helps us build careers, but we also have to know that there are other ethical implications and the consequences that are involved. So whenever we try to use an app, there is all the first page that pops us is the terms and conditions. Nobody, I don't think so, a lot of people don't read that. And this is something that should be, compulsory for everyone to read, that what are the requirements, the necessary requirements which you have to follow while using this application. And just because they are not enforced strictly, I think globally, not only in Indian context, globally, people don't know how to conduct themselves. So recently, a report came in where we know that how there are legal norms in places for us to conduct ourselves in our private and public sphere. But there are no legal implications for people who are committing crimes in these virtual places. And that also includes the gaming platforms. So still we have cases in India, we have cases in Australia and Britain that have come up, and the policy makers don't know what to do. So that is why when we are talking about the when we are talking about how kids need to learn this from the basic level, that has to be incorporated in their education system, that you need to have certain virtues, you need to inculcate these virtues in order to know how you need to conduct yourself in your community, how you need to conduct, I would say, virtually, and also in your practical life. So that is why when we are talking about compassion, when we are talking about kindness, these are the virtues that we need to display. Once we start doing it at the basic level, it will obviously impact on the virtual places as well. So uh, uh, so that was one of the main intentions of including this, that we don't know what our duty is. So when we were in school, we were given just a thin book on moral science, and we were asked just to read, to keep it at home, because learning mathematics and science and social science is considered much more important than teaching what our values should be. And that is where these components come into place, where we teach that first we have to reform ourselves, and only then we'll be able to reform the place where we are virtually interacting all the time.
Thank you,
Yes,
Suyasha.
sir.
Any other question? Anybody else? I don't want. Yes, Dr. Bapu, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is a very broad and general question. Yeah, you are talking about data processing these days. We talk about information technology, data science, and all that stuff, All this is okay. We generally distinguish. In other words, we live in an age of so much information, so much data, but little wisdom. See, traditionally, we distinguish between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge by itself doesn't make us wise. It doesn't bring us any wisdom. Now, given the data any data can be interpreted by different people different ways. Same data, looked at from some perspective. In other words, it is always colored by an individual's presuppositions, by an individual's existential situation, and so on. The same. So data is not something, which everybody sees the same data. No. So what you are talking about is there is a feminist way of looking at the data. Okay. Now, so far so good, but then in order, so here you bring in the notion of a justice and a compassion. Okay, the Buddhist ethics of karuna and justice. Now, how does those concepts play into this whole data science and all that stuff? Yeah, the data in some sense is unnecessary. See, when your ideal is one of karuna or compassion, the Buddhist notion, no matter what the data is, you have to pass beyond the data to come to the clear understanding. In other words, as we say in philosophy, that there are two ways of understanding a problem or reaching a goal. One is using the data. It is like going round and round, okay? Like that, you go and ultimately you think you may find the center of the things, you reach it. That is the way in which the data science works. The other way is what the Buddhist ethics and others advocate is don't go through all these things. It is like a parachute drop. When I see a problem, hey, look here, women have not been treated right all their lives. You don't need so many of these arguments. so that it is do something. It is a parachute drop right to the center of things. Okay, so that the more data we collect, we are just lost with figures and the statistics and so many studies. If you come up with one study, some other people come with another study and so on and so forth, it doesn't solve any problem really, because your fundamental presuppositions remain the same, Otherwise, oh, you say that data is not correct and this is not correct. As they say, there are three kinds of liars, the liars and the bad liars and the statisticians. Okay. So that statistics always lies, because it is not, there are always ways in which you can interpret this one. Now, can you clarify how, because you are talking about two different things, one is the data science and how it is used, the feminist ethics and so on. And on the other hand, you switch it over from there to the Buddhist ethics of karuna and compassion and justice and so on. Now, is all this data necessary for us to build a just society where women are treated equally, the marginalized people are treated equally and all that stuff? We don't really need that, What you need is a kind of a parachute drop, that way. There must be this awareness, keen awareness. That is what we have to build. Forget about data and all that. On the other hand, if you stick to the data and the so-called scientific data, it doesn't lead us anywhere. We are where we stand. For every study you come with a different kind of a study. Can you say where you are going in with this data science on the one hand and this one? You understand what I mean?
Yes, sir, I definitely understand, and it's an extremely valid point that we just need that parachute data rather than going on with a kind of an introduction. What are the things that have already happened and what is happening now? And I appreciate you saying that. And so I, when for this talk, I wanted to give a kind of a timeline, what is happening. I'm completely sure that uh, it is more about, it should have been more about emphasizing on the context of compassion, karuna that I was talking about, also ahimsa. And I deliberately chose to give it a very multidisciplinary nature. Now, when we are talking, so in the beginning, I introduced what artificial intelligence is and what are the implications. I felt that that was necessary because in order to talk about what the problem is and what women are facing, that is extremely justified, because we have to first show that despite of so many years of struggle that has already taken place, we have, as a society, people have come with new ways and more innovative ways to perpetuate those struggles. And we are still in the fourth wave of feminism witnessing that. So my aim was to take up it on an individual level rather than from a global perspective. So that is why I mentioned that it's something that is integrated in our daily lives. And when we are talking about privacy, so privacy is something that is integrated in our daily lives when we are talking about our rights, fundamental rights as a human being. These are the challenges that we face even though we want to exercise those rights that we have. So I'm sure in future this paper has the capability to expand more on the Indic components that you have just mentioned. And I would definitely do that. I would, the parachute data that you're talking about, I think that this has the potential to go beyond this. This was something that I introduced in my talk because I wanted to give a purview of how things are still lagging behind. And these Buddhist principles. So one of the major factors, since I have talked about privacy as a fundamental right, and that is why I try to show a connection between human rights and Buddhist principles, because human principles are definitely integrated in our own culture, and definitely integrated the virtues that we are asked to exercise, and we have been taught to exercise as a human beings. But surely this paper has potential to expand more on the ideas that you're talking about. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Suyasha. Any other question? Anybody else? I don't see anything in the chat box.
I can ask something very quickly if we have time.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
So first of all, I'd like to thank you, Suyasha ji, for bringing to the forefront the data surveillance challenges that are faced by women, and how ancient Indian philosophy has advocated to mitigate these problems and to help us understand, these challenges that we are facing in the 21st century. And for me, that was very interesting, because though I have heard about the challenges and myself as a woman have faced some, this was very interesting how you have interconnected ancient Indian philosophy in helping us to understand, not only understand, but how it can help mitigate this problem. I guess my main question on this would be, how do we make this effective? How I understand that data literacy and cybersecurity help in the face of challenges, but how are they going to help us not just face these challenges, but to mitigate the problem completely? Because, we are facing issues like patriarchal society, and we want to secure female data, especially in the light of what we see, even in our environment in which we live today, like doxing and trolling and hacking. And, with AI technology, this has become one step more, I mean, and these issues are something that every woman faces in the 21st century, including me. So how can we actually, get this problem resolved in a way that, is really good, because the challenges remain with us?
Thank you, Belaji, and for this, very wonderful question, because this is something that this topic was something that I took because I felt that I could relate it with more. And one of the foremost problems that we see is that why do these cases of harassment or crimes happen? So the first and foremost thing is that because people can do it anonymously without being caught. And because of the lack of regulations in place, even though there are regulations, we know that how we are extremely smart to commit, people are extremely smart to commit any kind of fraud, because there are always loopholes that you find in a system. And the first thing that while I was researching for this topic, I felt that there is an extreme lack of motivation by the policymakers in order to curb this problem, because they don't completely recognize it. And I felt that a lot of times women themselves don't report these cases, because I would like to take up another point in feminist care ethics, which is called shame. And shame is something that I think as a woman, it is being, I don't know, not inherent, but it's something that comes into our mind. Maybe we get, I don't know, we have this feeling of shame that, if something terrible happens, it is our fault. So first and foremost thing is that a lot of cases get unreported because we associate any kind of crimes as something that we have done it ourselves. So the first thing is to address this problem of shame first. And the second is, when I was talking about consciousness raising, that concept I use because, as I mentioned, it is about clearly connecting with each other, clearly connecting with each other, uh, going beyond the marginalization of communities, certain subgroups based on sexuality and race and caste is something that is extremely prevalent in India till now. And that is why I mentioned that marginalized women are the ones who face it. So as when Sen Gupta sir had, when I was answering him, I mentioned that uh, these values are something that have to be incorporated from the beginning. And these values are something that we are not aware of. If we talk in Indian context, it is not a very individualistic culture. Everyone is interconnected with each other, but still people get away a lot despite being from things that are now not to be proud of because of the lack of maybe confrontation that is still prevalent in the families and also in the communities. And another problem that we witness is of the patriarchal culture that is that is something extremely prevalent. So first and foremost, that is I said ki digital literacy has to be taught to everyone. And I think I felt it's a personal opinion that it has to be incorporated in every textbook or maybe in colleges and taught to students and taught to people. And first is that if we know how to use technology, so we still don't know how to use technology. Even though being educated, there are a lot of times that we don't know how to maybe use that pop-up or how maybe use that option. We don't know that. So I think that ignorance has to be overcome. And that ignorance is something that exists in people that, as a woman, we cannot, as a woman, usage of technology or even exposure to technology is something that is frowned upon. And that is something also I mentioned that even if you are expressing yourself, people will remind you of the concept of shame that you need to have as a woman when you are when you are using any kind of technology. So second thing is that we don't know how to distinguish the contents that are on internet, which are acceptable and which are non-acceptable. So here in practical life, we have a very thick line that is drawn that how you need to conduct yourself and how you need to go about it. But in virtual places, still, as a woman, we are figuring out how to conduct ourselves, which we actually don't know how to go about it, what is acceptable, what is non-acceptable, and what are the boundaries that we need to draw. And the second thing that I would like to mention here is the boundaries. In this practical life, we know that there are legal frameworks which have told us that these are the boundaries that need to be in place. But in virtual world, we don't know what these boundaries are, what comments are acceptable, what likes are acceptable, what content that is generated are acceptable, who can say what. So, and that is why you see that there are a lot of studies that have already been conducted on these non-essential and non-required contents or the comments that are in the social media. So to answer your question, first and foremost is digital technology, digital literacy, and I think it has to be introduced at the primary level.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
Thank
you,
you.
Suyasha ji. So I don't see, let's see, chat box.
No, I just thanked her.
No, not a question. So it's 11:11. So let me just thank Suyasha ji again for this wonderful seminar. And if you permit, Suyasha ji, I just want to kind of end with the kind of a closing thought. And that is,
Yes,
that also touches on Dr. Pappu's question. You see, I mean, the main reason we are in this conundrum is because we thought internet and its descendant avatars, World Wide Web and Facebook and social media and now AI, they will solve all these problems, especially this problem that we are today talking about, the status of women in society. And lo and behold, it hasn't happened, and sometimes internet has made it worse. So that's why we are we have no clue how to go about it. And I think the main difference between the Western response is that it is based on this dualistic model, same that Cartesian model. And unless we get out of this dualistic framework, and that's where Indic wisdom or Indic knowledge system comes in, unless we look at it as from a holistic perspective, we'll continue to kind of muddle through this. So with that, thank you so much again, Suyasha ji. As I said, we have been recording this, and we do record all our seminars. So in about a couple of days, we will post it on our YouTube channel, and then we'll send you a link. And our next seminar will be in the fall semester. As you know, we are pretty much in the last week of the spring semester. Our final exams start next week, and then the summer. So our next seminar will be in September. We don't know yet the time and the speaker, but the moment we finalize, Belaji and I, but the moment we finalize, we will let you know. So with that, thank you again. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Sukalyan sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Suyasha ji.
Thank you.